The world watched with bated breath, holding on to hope and fear in equal measure, as Donald Trump took the oath of office, marking a new chapter in American politics. His victory sent shockwaves across the globe, leaving many to wonder about the future of international cooperation. Conversations erupted in homes, offices, and government halls worldwide. Trump's stance on various international issues has been a topic of much debate, with his past statements and actions suggesting a shift in U.S. foreign policy. His rhetoric often challenged established norms, causing alarm among global leaders. As the new administration takes shape, the world waits to see how Trump's policies will impact global relations. The anticipation is palpable, with many fearing a shift in alliances and diplomatic strategies. The stakes are high, and the future remains uncertain. The global community is on edge, bracing for potential changes in international dynamics. Key international agreements and alliances now hang in the balance. These agreements symbolize hope and collective effort in maintaining global stability. The urgency of maintaining these alliances cannot be overstated. The stability of global politics relies heavily on these established relationships. Trump's campaign promises to renegotiate or withdraw from key international agreements have raised serious concerns among world leaders and diplomats alike. The potential departure of the U.S. from these commitments could undermine global efforts. The potential unraveling of these historic agreements could have far-reaching implications for global stability and the well-being of future generations. The political and social costs could be immense. The urgency of maintaining global cooperation cannot be overstated. Every moment of inaction brings us closer to geopolitical instability. Experts warn that we are running out of time to avert the worst effects of geopolitical shifts. The data is clear, and the warnings are dire. Rising tensions, economic disruptions, and humanitarian crises are just a glimpse of the challenges that lie ahead if we fail to act decisively. The consequences will be felt by all, especially the most vulnerable. The world is looking to the United States as a global leader to play a leading role in maintaining international stability. The U.S. leadership is crucial for maintaining momentum. However, Trump's victory has injected a sense of uncertainty and apprehension into global relations. The mixed reactions reflect the deep divisions on this issue. The international community must now grapple with the implications of a Trump presidency for global cooperation. Diplomatic efforts will need to be redoubled to keep the international agenda on track. Will the United States retreat from its commitments under key international agreements? This question looms large over every diplomatic discussion. Will other countries follow suit, jeopardizing the fragile consensus that has been built over years of negotiations? The ripple effects could be devastating. The answers to these questions will have profound implications for the future of our global community. The path we choose now will determine the legacy we leave for future generations. Throughout his campaign, Donald Trump repeatedly questioned the science behind climate change. He famously called it a hoax perpetrated by China, a claim that has been widely debunked by scientists. Trump's skepticism towards climate science has raised concerns among environmentalists and scientists who fear that his administration will disregard scientific evidence in policymaking. The dismissal of scientific consensus on climate change could have serious consequences for the development and implementation of effective climate policies. Trump's actions as president-elect have done little to assuage these fears. He has appointed several individuals with ties to the fossil fuel industry to key positions within his administration. These appointments suggest that Trump's energy policy will prioritize fossil fuels over renewable energy sources, a move that could have detrimental effects on the environment. The prioritization of fossil fuels over clean energy sources could undermine efforts to transition to a low-carbon economy and exacerbate the impacts of climate change. Furthermore, Trump has pledged to roll back many of the environmental regulations put in place by the Obama administration. These regulations, aimed at curbing greenhouse gas emissions and promoting clean energy, were seen as crucial steps towards meeting the United States' commitments under the Paris Agreement. The dismantling of these regulations could reverse years of progress on climate action and send a signal to the rest of the world that the United States is no longer committed to addressing this global challenge. Trump's history with climate change suggests a deep-seated skepticism towards the issue and a reluctance to prioritize environmental protection over economic interests. His actions as president will have significant implications for the future of climate policy in the United States and the global effort to combat climate change. The scientific community has issued dire warnings about the potential consequences of inaction on climate change. These warnings are not new, but they have become increasingly urgent as the evidence of climate change's impact continues to mount. Leading climate scientists have emphasized the urgency of addressing this issue, stating that we are approaching a point of no return. They stress that immediate and sustained action is necessary to prevent the most catastrophic outcomes. The longer we wait to reduce greenhouse gas emissions, the more severe the impacts of climate change will be. This includes not only environmental damage, but also economic and social disruptions that could affect millions of people worldwide. The potential consequences include rising sea levels, which threaten to inundate coastal cities and displace millions of people. More frequent and intense heat waves, which can lead to severe health problems and increased mortality rates, especially among vulnerable populations. Droughts, which can devastate agriculture and lead to water shortages, and floods, which can cause widespread damage to infrastructure and homes, and disruptions to ecosystems and food security, which can lead to food shortages and increased prices, affecting the most vulnerable communities the hardest. The Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, or IPCC, the leading international body for the assessment of climate change, has concluded that human activities are the dominant cause of the observed warming since the mid-20th century. This conclusion is based on extensive research and data analysis. The IPCC's fifth assessment report, released in 2013, stated that it is extremely likely that human influence has been the dominant cause of the observed warming since the mid-20th century. This report has been a critical resource for policymakers and scientists alike. The report also warned that continued emissions of greenhouse gases will cause further warming and changes in all components of the climate system. This includes more extreme weather events, loss of biodiversity, and significant changes to global ecosystems. Limiting climate change will require substantial and sustained reductions in greenhouse gas emissions. This means transitioning to renewable energy sources, improving energy efficiency, and adopting sustainable practices across all sectors of society. Despite the overwhelming scientific consensus on climate change, there remains a vocal minority who deny the science or downplay the risks. These individuals often have significant influence, which can hinder progress on climate action. These climate change deniers often point to natural climate variability or other factors to explain the observed warming, ignoring the overwhelming evidence to the contrary. Their arguments are frequently amplified by certain media outlets and social media platforms. The dissemination of misinformation and doubt about climate change has hampered efforts to build public support for climate action. This confusion can lead to apathy and inaction, further exacerbating the problem. It is crucial to rely on credible scientific sources and to be aware of the tactics used by climate change deniers to spread misinformation. Public education and awareness are key to combating this misinformation and building a consensus for action. The potential consequences of climate change are far-reaching and pose significant risks to human societies and ecosystems worldwide. These impacts are already being felt and will only intensify if action is not taken. Failure to address this issue could have devastating consequences for future generations. The choices we make today will determine the world they inherit. It is essential that policymakers heed the warnings of the scientific community and take swift and decisive action to mitigate the risks of climate change. This includes enacting strong climate policies, investing in renewable energy, and supporting international efforts to combat climate change. The Paris Agreement, adopted in December 2015, marked a historic turning point in the global fight against climate change. This landmark accord brought together nations from all corners of the globe, united by a common goal to address one of the most pressing issues of our time. For the first time, nearly every country in the world came together to commit to taking action to reduce their greenhouse gas emissions. This unprecedented level of cooperation signaled a new era of international collaboration and shared responsibility. The agreement aims to keep global temperature rise this century well below 2 degrees Celsius above pre-industrial levels, while pursuing efforts to limit the temperature increase even further to 1.5 degrees Celsius. This ambitious target reflects the urgent need to mitigate the worst impacts of climate change. To achieve this goal, countries submitted their own nationally determined contributions, or NDCs, outlining their plans to reduce emissions and adapt to the impacts of climate change. These NDCs are crucial as they represent each nation's commitment and strategy to combat climate change. The Paris Agreement was hailed as a major diplomatic achievement, demonstrating the global community's commitment to tackling this shared challenge. The sense of unity and purpose was palpable as leaders celebrated this significant milestone. However, the election of Donald Trump as President of the United States cast a shadow of uncertainty over the future of the agreement. His administration's stance on climate change was a stark departure from the previous administration's policies. Trump had previously expressed skepticism about climate change and pledged to withdraw the United States from the Paris Agreement during his campaign. This promise was met with widespread concern and criticism from the international community. His stance raised concerns among world leaders and climate advocates who feared that the United States, as the world's second-largest emitter of greenhouse gases, could undermine the global effort to combat climate change. The potential withdrawal of such a significant player threatened to derail the progress made under the Paris Agreement. Despite these concerns, the international community has reaffirmed its commitment to the Paris Agreement. Countries around the world have continued to emphasize the importance of collective action and have vowed to uphold their climate commitments. In the wake of Trump's election, world leaders, including those from China, France, and Germany, have reiterated their support for the agreement and urged the United States to remain a party to it. Their unified stance highlights the global consensus on the need for climate action. The European Union and China, in particular, have emerged as key players in driving forward climate action. Their leadership and commitment have been instrumental in maintaining the momentum of the Paris Agreement. They have strengthened their cooperation on climate change and pledged to continue implementing their commitments under the Paris Agreement, regardless of the United States' position. This collaboration serves as a powerful example of international solidarity. The future of the Paris Agreement and the global fight against climate change remain uncertain. The potential withdrawal of the United States has introduced a level of unpredictability that could impact global efforts. The international community is grappling with the implications of the United States' potential withdrawal from the agreement and the leadership void that it would create. This situation has prompted discussions on how to fill the gap and ensure continued progress. However, the global momentum behind climate action remains strong, and many countries are determined to press forward with efforts to reduce emissions and transition to a low-carbon economy. The commitment to a sustainable future continues to drive innovation and policy changes worldwide.